first of all, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that commented on myself and Gio's Sky Sports video yesterday, where we were promoting the fact that we were on the Sky Sports podcast. If you haven't listened to the Sky Sports podcast, the link is in the description below. Go and give it a listen. And it's about Dimitri Payet, and myself and Gio were invited on there. Julian Dix on there, Darren Roundup. Basically, lots of people that are far more important than myself and Gio, but probably don't talk quite as much. But we were on there. We were really honoured to be invited on it, as you know. But I want to talk about the comments underneath that so many of you posted. That we're watching Hammers Chat for a long time, and you were just saying how pleased you were, and it was just some lovely, lovely comments on there. And I thank you all so much for that. Oh, by the way, later on, so tonight, 5, 6 o'clock, whenever Gio's finished editing the video, Darmish is on with us. We're doing a transfer video, basically, with Darmish from Sky Sports, which is a massive, again, another massive feather in the cap for Hammers Chat, and we're really chuffed. So I want to thank Nick, who we did the podcast with, Darmish. I thank him publicly, but we thanked him privately anyway. That's up about 5 o'clock this evening. It's going to be a two-parter, so one tonight, one tomorrow, over on the main channel. We're going to be discussing an awful lot of things with him. The likelihood of Zuma, Milenkovic signing, the likelihood of getting in a striker, his contacts about getting information from David Moyes. All these things are discussed. And it was a real eye-opener and a real education in both videos, part 1 and part 2, where part 2 we very much discuss about how he gets his information and stuff like that. Part 1, which is this evening, is sort of more pertinent to West Ham and what we're doing or not doing in a transfer window as it is at the moment, which is sort of what this video is about, because I've got a little theory, basically, and just hear me out on this. I'm quite sure now that David Moyes has got money to spend. I am. I think at the start there was a suspicion that maybe David Sullivan hadn't given him any money. I think there was also some people saying it was dithering Dave and all this sort of stuff. The conspiracy theory in that is that Sullivan didn't give him any money. For that to be true, I've said it before, you have to assume that David Moyes went in and signed a new contract knowing that he wasn't going to get any money, or that he went and signed a new contract with David Sullivan saying, I'll give you money, and he got to now, and now David Sullivan's saying, I'm not giving you any money. If that's true, we have to assume that then David Moyes is pretending that hasn't happened. I just don't think he'd do that. I think he'd be stroppy. I think he'd be grumpy. And I think he'd be really, really unhappy with what David Sullivan's done. I just don't think that's the case. I think he's got money to spend. I don't think it's a fortune. I don't know how much it is. 20, 30, 40, 50 million? I don't know. Do I believe it was the 80 odd million reported? Probably not, no. But I think there's some money to spend. The fact of the matter is he's not spending it. And the reason I finally believe that is, well, I'll let you make your own mind up when you see the Sky Sports podcast, the Sky Sports interview with us later on Hammers Chat. Also, David Moyes is saying it himself. So David Sullivan says it, and David Moyes says it, which is David Moyes is openly saying, I've got money, I just want to be careful with it. I also think there's another factor that comes into play here. And this is why I think, as you know, my theory is that we're going to get to the last knock-ins of the transfer window, basically, and there's going to be a flurry of activity. And I've thought for some time, because of COVID, there's going to be some creative deals. I think all up the pyramid. I think Barcelona and Inter Milan and clubs that I've discussed recently are going to be trying to shift their players, right? Really, really quickly to get them off the books. There's no way that is even remotely serviceable in terms of the amount of money that those clubs earn. And if there's a really quick way that a club can get 10 or 20 million pound in, then it's by selling players, and they're going to need to. I also think at the lower end, when you look at, I don't know, pick a championship club, anyone, Nottingham Forest, let's choose Nottingham Forest. I don't know if they're in good or bad financial health, but you have to assume with 18 months of no fans going in there, it ain't great. If you've got an asset, and I believe, what's the guy's name? Joe Worrell, I think, is a centre-back there. If he's worth, I've said this before, but I'll just quickly make the point again. If they think he's worth 15, but it gets to transfer deadline day, and actually someone comes in with 8, they might just have to do it because whilst we all like to keep our best players, that 8 million might be the difference in literally the operational survival of the club. The club may not survive. If that's the case, you're just going to do it. So I think for that reason, there'll be a flurry of activity, both at the bottom and at the top. I was thinking there's going to be so many loan deals are going to happen. I really do. I think it's going to be absolutely crazy. When I looked at the ins and outs, the list of ins and outs and signings in the Premier League, I mean, West Ham were bottom pretty much. I think we were bottom really. But it wasn't the fact that everybody had bought more players in than us, which they have. What I really noticed when I was looking for it is the amount of players that clubs have released. There'd normally be a balance to it when you look at this list every year. I don't know. Arsenal bring in 8 players, but they release 8 players or sell 8 players. There's a balance to it. If you look down the list now, it's completely unbalanced in as much as just there's clubs letting 10, 15 players leave and bringing in 4 or 5. So I think there is a streamlining going on here. And actually, you've got to feel a little bit sorry because there are a lot of professional footballers who are, what can I say? It's like your golf club pro, if you know what I mean. You're a professional golfer, yes, but do you actually play loads of professional golf on the tour? I think no, you know. And I think there's a number of professional footballers who are paid not to be around, but they just don't play in the first team. They would play the equivalent of reserve team football, under 23 football, and they, you know, they're going to be journeymen, but actually clubs can afford to keep them on because actually they're probably on relatively low money, 5-6 grand a week, which in footballing terms is not an awful lot. I think a lot of those players are being released at the moment. So I think there's certainly going to be a flurry of activity in terms of other loans. Just to get someone off the books for 20 grand a week is going to be massive at the moment, and they're going to be really advantageous for a club to do it. But here's my theory. Rob Newman is he's going to be our new director of football or recruitment, head of recruitment, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. He's going to be in charge of bringing players in and identifying players. This is really interesting because we've poached him, nicked him, whatever, recruited him from Man City. He's not allowed to start, and apparently his official joining date is as soon as the transfer window ends. So he's no good to us in this transfer window. Now, what you can't do is you can't take Manchester City's intellectual property. You can't take the players that he's scouted for them. Now, I understand we look at it, we've discussed this before, that actually, you know, it doesn't matter, Man City, they buy Jack Grealish for 100 million and the rest of it. Actually, if you look at Man City's model, there's actually a load of players who they bring in for not much money. That Yangel Rangel would be a case in point. The left back, his name escapes me. The Ukrainian left back that they have. There's a number of players that they do actually bring in 4, 5, 6 million here or there. Zinchenko, there you go. There's a lot of players those get scouted, so they're going to have a portfolio of those players. What he's not allowed to do, Rob Newman, at the moment, is even though he's officially not started for West Ham, is to say, all right, what is it? There's this midfielder in Spain that's worth 8 million. There's this guy, I don't know, in Brazil at Fluminense, who's a right back who'd be really good. Basically, his contact book, he can't give that to West Ham. Now, don't get me wrong, the dossiers will all remain at Manchester City, but I think we'd all be crazy to think if he comes over and David Moyes turns around and says, I need a left winger, that the new guy wouldn't say, okay, I know 3 left wingers because when I was over scouting in Germany last year, there was X, Y, and Z. So I think there's a certain amount of that. So why are we bringing this guy in? Well, we're bringing this guy in to improve our recruitment. If this guy comes in, Rob Newman, there's going to be players that he wants to buy. In which case, I do wonder if we're saving the bulk of our transfer money until the winter window. In the winter window, we can then buy these players that Rob Newman has scouted, these players that Rob Newman has highlighted. Basically, his picks, his choices. Because actually, if you think about it, let's say we've got a £45 million kitty to spend this year. I don't mean just this window, this year, right? This season. What's the point, in many respects, in bringing director of recruitment in if actually you spend all the money in this window and then you get to the January window and he's got nothing to spend? You're almost, what's the point in employing him so early? Unless, I guess, he's looking at long term, looking at things for next season and on. I just think if you're going to create such a pivotal role at a club, if you're going to recruit somebody from arguably the best club in the world, you're getting that guy because you want him to do his job. But if his job is buying players, you're going to want to give him some money to buy players. We know we don't have limitless funds, so surely, I think it's putting two and two together and coming up with four in this instance. Surely you're going to give him some money, and that's going to be in the winter window. So for that reason, I think it's loans. I do. I'm not saying we don't sign a player. I'm not saying we won't spend half the budget, for instance. But I think, just reading between the lines, don't be surprised if West Ham spend 20-odd million pound on a player and then bring in another 2 loans. And then actually we get to the January window and then we buy another player again. And I think, if we do that, then you'll start seeing the first hallmarks, the first stamps of the director of recruitment, Rob Newman.